Management science is crystal clear that for organizations in transition and facing the challenges, stability is a prerequisite. Investors and all stakeholders remain doubtful about the sustainability of a company if no such stability is obtained. Honorable members, if Eskom fails, contractors and other suppliers of goods and services to Eskom fail. Management will also feel the heat. Workers also lose. This then behoves all of us to play their part. We have learned with utter dismay and disbelief, honorable members, that there are coal suppliers who, for whatever reason, are making super profits at Eskom. We're reliably told that some of these companies are making profits of up to 50%, 70%, and up to 100%. While there may be binding agreements, we urge the board and the minister to renegotiate these contracts and report back to Parliament. It will be difficult to justify subsidization of super profits through these special appropriations to the people of South Africa. Government is leading the way, and we therefore expect everyone who cares about Eskom and the economy of this country to play his part or her part. It's only when we have unity of purpose that the future of Eskom can be guaranteed. The committee received submission from Alternative Information Development Center, AIDC, who proposes that Eskom should look for other different and creative ways of funding. The over-reliance on government is unsustainable, they argued. This is in line with the debate in this House about the need of government to look at prescribed assets as another source of funding. Obviously, Honorable Chair, this should be done with utmost care with necessary checks and balances. For Eskom and perhaps for other SOCs, worker representations to the board must be considered. This will also help with dealing with the trust deficit between the board and management on the one hand and labor on the other. Penultimately, we call on all people to pay for the usage of electricity to ensure that we have electricity for the following day. We urge community leaders to engage and ensure that this problem is equitably solved. We can no longer justify the non-payment of services. We owe that to posterity. At the same time, it is important that municipalities also perfect their billing systems. The paper on the new look of Eskom will assist in understanding its future. The Minister of Public Enterprises assured the committee that the President will soon be unveiling it. We are delighted that the President has undertaken to release the special paper on Eskom, a blueprint of turning Eskom around soon. With such interventions, we have no doubt, honorable members, that will be on a sustainable path to Eskom recovery. The ANC support this special appropriation bill. Thank you.
Honorable Sarupen.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It's not easy being the tallest member of this House. Deputy Speaker, we just heard from the ANC that when the bailout money runs out, prescribed assets are coming. That was just confirmed to us, and that should give us all pause for thought. But Speaker, what's more important is that Eskom has a gun to the head of this government, as we've just heard, because they're ready to pull the trigger on a sovereign debt crisis at any time if National Treasury does not do their bidding. This is a fact. Every citizen in our country is a hostage to Eskom. We are hostage to load shedding, which causes massive economic damage. We are hostage to these bailout demands, and we are hostage to their endless management crises. Eskom is not even capable of holding onto a CEO. And we now have a point where the board chair is the acting CEO. So we've got an entity riddled with corporate governance problems, whose board chairperson is meant to hold its corporate governance to account, actually being in charge of it. That is not how you manage an entity this big. There are days when I ask myself if Eskom is physically burning money and not diesel to keep the lights on. Losses at Eskom have accelerated from 2.3 billion rands last year to 21 billion rands this year. While at the same time, Eskom municipal debt, outstanding debt from municipalities to Eskom has accelerated from 2.3 billion rands to 20 billion rands. Most of the debt from municipalities emanates from the Free State, the gangster state of Ace Magashule, I dare say. It is interesting to note, Speaker, that the parliamentary program had originally planned to pass this particular bill with the adjustment budget in December, but our hostage takers at Eskom demanded their money at the end of this month. This means that there were many joint meetings with the NCOP committee on this bill, and it was fast-tracked to today. And in this context, one wonders if load shedding was not a hostage takers ensuring that they got their money on time. In this present form, this one-page bill will hand 59 billion rands in ransom money over to Eskom over the next 2 years, in addition to 23 billion rands a year already allocated to Eskom over the next 10 years, blowing up the deficit and debt in a constrained fiscal environment. And I call it ransom because it's unconditional. The bill allows the finance minister to transfer the money to Eskom without any preconditions being met. He can impose his conditions after giving him the money. If I gave you a loan for a house and then you spent it in a car, no bank would allow that, but National Treasury does. And the DA offered several amendments to this bill, including saying that no executives at Eskom should get bonuses. People are tired of seeing their schools, their hospitals, and their clinics crumble, while SOEs consume resources meant for the poor and reward their management with bonuses. Another DA amendment that was rejected was that Eskom review all of its procurement contracts to eliminate cost inflation as a result of dodgy deals done under ANC administration, I might say. Eskom coal price contracts show that some companies charge double what others do for coal. And the cost inflation is estimated to be 10 billion rands a year. You begin to see how these Eskom losses stack up. The amendments that the DA proposed were rejected because they're supposedly contained in Eskom's 9-point plan. But Eskom has had so many turnaround plans that they're back to where they started. Simply put, instead of using the full might of the law in this bill to force the management of Eskom to do the right thing, this parliament wants to trust the same people who lost 21 billion rands last year and cannot keep the lights on to adhere to yet another turnaround plan. The management of Eskom is so poor that at the start of this month, the 1st of October, Fitch downgraded Eskom's standalone credit rating to junk. The bill, in its present form, is a blank check and more of the same. It rewards the culture of state capture and theft. It diminishes the importance of oversight and accountability for public money. It allows Eskom to continue to hold a gun to the heads of our citizens, our businesses, and our government. The only way out of this mess, is to follow the very sensible proposals that the National Treasury Economic Strategy document proposes, as well as diversifying our generating capacity away from coal, and finally, privatizing generating capacity. Without this, we'll be bailing out Eskom for another 100 years, and I don't think the South African public deserves all of its resources that should be used on the poor drained on Eskom. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Shivambo.
No, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. So the Minister of Finance is tabling a special appropriation bill, which is basically a request to withdraw 59 billion rands from the National Revenue Fund with the intention of giving that 59 billion rand to Eskom on the illusionary hope that such is going to save Eskom from the current financial crisis. In 2015, the Minister of Finance then, Tlantaneni, he tabled the same bill, which was asking for 23 billion, and also asked for the conversion of a 60 billion rand loan into equity, which was the previous intervention of the state into Eskom. And all of these are made with the intention that it will lead to the stabilization of Eskom. And since the 23 billion request, there were a lot of conditionalities and commitments made here that will be the last time we make an intervention in Eskom. But where are we now? Eskom is still in a debt of more than 400 billion rands. In the current financial year, it made losses of more than 20 billion rand. And now we're being asked to agree on the withdrawal of 59 billion rands from the National Revenue Fund to again give to Eskom. But there are far much more deeper crises in Eskom which the political leadership is ignoring. One is that there's a leadership crisis. We have got a chairperson of the board who is incompetent and has been appointed as an acting CEO. There is no stability in terms of the leadership of Eskom. But the bigger crisis that Eskom is facing is the stabilization of coal prices. The National Energy Regulator of South Africa, NERSA, has said that the coal prices must cost about 350 rands per ton. But currently, Glencore is supplying coal to Eskom at more than 600 rand per ton. And that is the case with the established coal suppliers. And you will never gain stability in Eskom unless you have stabilized the supply of coal prices. The other factor which is being ignored deliberately by the politicians is the power purchase agreements, that Eskom expends more than 25% on primary energy costs on IPPs, but the IPPs only generate about 5% of the energy that is needed. There is no sense in terms of retention of the power purchase agreements in the manner in which they are designed currently. So let us now talk to what should happen. If we were to agree to a special appropriation bill, one, we must fire Jabu Mabuza as the chairperson and acting CEO and supplier of Eskom. He's a service provider of Eskom. He is incompetent. There will never be any changes that will happen under the stewardship of Jabu Mabuza. Two, we must stabilize the prices of coal to the NERSA acceptable and given levels. Three, we should fundamentally review the power purchase agreements with the IPPs. And Eskom should have, the new leadership of Eskom should have the autonomy to independently negotiate the power purchase agreements without the imposition from the Department of Energy or whoever is doing so. Because in many instances, the leadership of Eskom is not aware who has signed those power purchase agreements. That is what in the immediate should happen. But the other thing that must be looked into is that do not unbundle a crisis-ridden Eskom. You can't say that you have got a crisis that is defining this power utility and you want to break it down into three entities. That is just going to deepen the crisis. The other thing that must be done is that the state should establish an independent renewable energy division so that we do not fully depend on the private power producers to generate renewable energy. And then as a long-term or medium-term intervention, you should pursue nuclear energy, but in a fiscally neutral way. You can have a build, operate, transfer model that can have those that have got money build, operate, and then transfer later on to the state in terms of how it should be. And then the other issue that must be dealt with is that you should assemble a highly skilled team to investigate the delays on the completion of Kusile and Medupi. Because there is a lot of money that has already been lost there. There's no clarity as to when are we going to plug Medupi and Kusile into the national grid. So we might need to then deal with that in the immediate. Unless all these things have been dealt with adequately, the EFF will not agree to the continuous withdrawal of money from the National Revenue Fund to just throw into a sieve called Eskom. Thank you very much.
Honorable Buthelezi.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Year after year, and of late, many months pass us by before we rise to this podium to essentially sign off yet another special appropriation to yet another one of government's crumbling state-owned entity. Where do we begin to draw the line when it comes to redirecting billions of rands which can be better used, improving the lives of millions of our people who are subject to dire poverty? When do we say the board members of all SOEs that clearly they've failed to root out the mismanagement, corruption, and maladministration, and dismally failed to ensure that things are turning around? Do we constantly have to be held at ransom by our very own SOEs who have become too big to fall? Do we really need to suffer the consequences when markets tremble, our currency falls, investors write ever-long reports, and rating agencies threat us with credit downgrades before any real action and real political will kicks in to do what is right for all South Africans? Honorable Deputy Speaker, we are fast becoming an economy which works on bailout simply to stimulate growth, and clearly, in this case, another 59 billion to keep the lights on. A billion here, a couple of millions there, and another billions over there. To many watching this house at home, it clearly does not seem like we are short of cash when some ask and get, and others ask, but they are told there is no more money. Many hears the unquestionable no, there is no enough money. The ones who get to hear this more often are critical institutions and are people doing the best that they can with the bare minimum. Our NGOs, our schools, our hospitals, and water infrastructure, and the basics we require in rural and urban nodes in our country have to suffer and wait to apply for funding. Yet, it seems Eskom flips the switch and we are in a frenzy load shedding, rolling blackouts, and havoc. Yes, we know that Eskom's success is directly linked to our economy's recovery. And yes, we are all aware of the challenges that Eskom faces. But the IFP has time and time again warned that Eskom and many other SOEs face non-financial problems. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, these problems are deeply rooted in mismanagement, theft, and are rooted in ensuring that the state-owned entities continue to receive bailouts, which will never satisfy their colossal appetite. Honorable Speaker, it is in the best interest of people of South Africa to keep our lights on and in saving our economy from collapse. It's for this reason that the IFP support this appropriation, because we are doomed if we do and we are doomed if we don't. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Vessels.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, the question before us is not if the failure
Honorable
of
members,
Eskom
your
will
levels
be...
of noise are too high, please. Please keep your voices low. Honorable members, your noise levels are unacceptably high. Go ahead, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the question before us is not if the failure of Eskom will be detrimental to our economy. We all know that. We all know that for us to excel and for this economy to grow, we need a stable power utility. But the question is, will 59 billion rand of taxpayers' money prevent the collapse of Eskom? Will it prevent further load shedding? The previous 83 billion rand since 2006 paid to Eskom in the form of bailouts did not. Why would this differ? Yes, the 59 billion rand now comes with conditions, but the 83 billion rand also did. The 83 billion rand was supposed to be used by Eskom only for the enhancement of electricity generation and capacity and security of supply, and not for operational expenses. What was it used for? Operational expenses. So what will be different now? The last time the power utility paid dividends to government was in 2006, a mere 1.6 billion rand. Eskom has already failed, Honourable Buthelezi. Who is responsible for the demise of Eskom? It's not the past. It's the ANC. It's the ANC and the Cadre Deployment Committee who appointed board members and executives to Eskom who allowed the utility to be looted, to be exploited, whilst neglecting maintenance and good management, and whilst paying exuberant salaries to their executives. It's the ANC government who allowed this to happen. This bailout and the further exploitation of taxpayers will not solve the problems. The ANC government is not serious about solving the problems as they proved today, because members of the Interministerial Committee, who's tasked to solve the issue regarding outstanding debt of municipalities to Eskom, did not even show up to a meeting of the Standing Committee of Public Accounts. Where were they? They're not serious. 2 years later, and nothing has been done. And now we must give another billions of rands of taxpayer money to Eskom. It will not solve the problems. The solution, Honourable Member, is to stop having yourself kept ransom by your alliance partners. Ministers and even the president have stood at this podium and announced solutions, but then they go back and the COSATUs and the SACP tell them, no, you're not allowed to do that, and now there's another special appropriation bill. We need privatization, we need unbundling of Eskom, but your alliance partners are preventing you from doing it. So, Honourable Buthelezi, yes, you agree with COSATU, but you agree with them because you have no other choice. You're being kept ransom and you're keeping the people of South Africa ransom. We need deregulation of electricity supply in South Africa. We need to deregulate and create competition for power utilities so that private firms can also produce electricity and put it into the grid, and so that there is a competitive electricity supply in South Africa. It is unacceptable that we are keeping and doing the same thing over and over again with no different solution. That is the definition of insanity. We do not support this appropriation.
Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I rise to represent the ACDP in this debate with a sense of outrage at the situation at Eskom. 15 years ago, Eskom was one of the best power utilities in the world. It had a better credit rating than the sovereign rating. It had reserves of between 20 and 40 billion rand. And it is therefore deeply disturbing that it suffered an unprecedented loss of 21 billion rand this past year and has to borrow increasing amounts merely to service a 450 billion rand debt. It is financially bankrupt. How then did it end up in this situation? The ACDP was an active participant in the Eskom oversight inquiry in the 5th Parliament, where rampant fraud, corruption and state capture was uncovered, largely facilitated by the Zuma administration. Further evidence of this has been heard before the Zondo Commission. Sadly, very little action has been taken against the criminals involved. Instead, those brave members, including the ANC members, who exposed the corruption, the inquiry chairperson, Honourable Dorothy Ronto, and others whose lives were threatened during that inquiry, have been sidelined and were not re-elected to this Parliament. Those implicated, many of them were re-elected and occupy many seats in this very House. And the pushback against those trying to fight state capture and corruption continues unabated. This is the reason of my outrage. And that the question is, how can we justify this additional expense? Where's the political accountability? Why does no one stand up from the majority party and say we accept responsibility for the state of affairs? And we know other reasons why Eskom finds itself in this crisis are the cost overruns at Medupi and Kusile, the bloated and expensive workforce, and the coal procurement strategy. And of course, the failure to collect debt that is due to Eskom. Where is the political will to collect that debt? Eskom's financial predicament is entirely of its own doing, aided and abetted by ANC politically linked ministers who ensured that compliant boards were put in place to serve the interests of a corrupt few, and in particular, the Guptas. Now, the taxpayer is asked to fork out tens of billions of rands with the spectre of load shedding and a sovereign credit downgrade looming. How can this be justifiable? No wonder there is outrage amongst the members of the public. Speaker, the ACDP proposes that a special ad hoc committee must be set up to exercise oversight over Eskom. Public Enterprises does its best, but we cannot look to Transnet, Denel, SAA, whereas Eskom of itself needs an ad hoc committee to ensure that the conditions for this bailout are complied with. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Kwankwa.
Thank you very much. Deputy Speaker, United Democratic Movement ayixhasi lo mbhedo. Ngoba kaloku thina bantu baseMzantsi Afrika ndifuna baqale bacacelwe abantu basemakhaya bangacingi into basifuna umbane wabo ucinywe. Number one, the governance weaknesses or challenges at Eskom, we feel that they have not been addressed. There is no clear, despite what the government has been saying and the assurances that we've been given, it is our considered view that there is no clear turnaround strategy or a strategy for Eskom to try and turn around the institution, right? Another important issue is, which was cited earlier, the cost, reducing the cost of IPPs, independent power producers in particular, because we want to cite an important statistic as a way of substantiating this line of argument. For example, in 2015, that cost was 9.5 billion rand, 2016, 15.1 billion rands, 2017, 19.8 billion rands, and 2018, it's 25 billion rands that goes to IPPs, which naturally then increases the overall cost or the average cost of generating electricity at the time when we should be making energy cheap so that we can be able to stimulate economic growth. This matter seems like there is no intention on the part of government to even cap or try to ensure that the price that IPPs charge Eskom for electricity are manageable. The other important issue is that, indeed it was cited earlier, NESA regulations talk about 350 rands per ton for coal, but Eskom has paid in excess of that. When we're doing oversight last week as a standing committee on appropriations on this issue, they also cited the fact that I think it's either a supplier or suppliers were overpaid to the tune of 4 billion rands, which is money they need to recover. How do you overpay someone to the tune of 4 billion rands? Look at the Auditor General's report on Eskom. It talks about procurement and financial irregularities non-stop, and yet we are saying we should be throwing money at the problem instead of addressing the underlying root causes of the challenge. Unbundling, whether you like it or not, comes out of the manuals of the IMF and World Bank on privatization. Unless and until government is able to produce a concept document that can outline what it means by unbundling, it's clear that the fears of trade unions in particular, and some among us in South Africa, that this is a precursor to privatization, are not unfounded. The other very important issue that we want to highlight is that why is Eskom not allowed to play in the renewable energy space? Who is benefiting out of that? And why are we creating monopolies in those sectors? And who works at these wind farms? Because they employ 3, 4, 5 people, and yet we spend 25 billion rands per annum, instead of spending money on areas where they will ensure socio-economic development benefits for the country. Marcel.
Medical.
Our Deputy President, Deputy Speaker, honorable members of Parliament, let me start by questioning facts. Fact number one is that currently coal is the lifeblood of the South African economy. It is the predominant fuel source for electricity, accounting for about 90% of South Africa's primary energy needs. Without coal-derived electricity, industries such as manufacturing, financial services, and social services would be severely crippled, resulting in massive job losses. We therefore need coal as things stand right now, while we diversify our energy mix into the future. In addition to the extensive use of coal in the domestic economy, about 28% of South Africa's production is exported, mainly through the Richards Bay Coal Terminal, making South Africa the 4th largest coal exporting country in the world. In 2018, total coal sales were 146 billion, up from 130 billion in 2017. Fact number two is that coal mining is the 3rd largest employer in the mining sector. The coal industry employed 86,647 people in 2018, up from 82,248 in 2017, representing about 19% of total employment in the mining sector. However, despite these hard facts, we do acknowledge that the calls to decrease the world's dependency on coal as an energy source are well-intentioned. Lower use would reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and less demand would lower the environmental risk of coal mining. As such, as the world moves away from coal, South Africa will need to consider the implications. For example, Full dependence on renewable energy can only be done if we move to lifestyles and systems that require only a small fraction of the present rich world per capita energy consumption. If all South Africans, including the majority of whom are in the rural areas, were to be brought to the required living standards, the renewable energy would not be able to cater for all of us. This is fact number 3. So we need to strike a balance between all these factors. That is why we bought into and supported the idea of just transition, which is the idea that justice and equity must form an integral part of the transition towards a low carbon world. At its core is the view that it is possible and necessary to promote through the mobilization and collaboration of workers and communities public policies that simultaneously address environmental challenges and secure decent jobs and livelihoods for affected workers. It is thus no-brainer that the trade union movement throughout the world is in support of and advocate for this just transition, as the country South Africa is in support of this. This is evident from the consultative forums, including NEDLAC, that our government have with unions when dealing with issues that affect workers, such as just transition. I also want to applaud our own portfolio committee on employment and labor for adopting a consultative program of action which makes labor unions important stakeholders, therefore, of this 6th parliament. We also support the view of National Union Mine Workers that government should support Eskom with funding as one of its entities achieve its development goals. That is why we support this special appropriation bill. However, we want to make a clarion call to all who owe Eskom, especially the organs of state, to please do their patriotic duty and pay their Eskom debts. The government bailouts are not and will never be sustainable. If the residents of Polokwane municipality where I come from, the majority of whom are poor, could pay their electricity bills, what stops the rest of us to do the same? Mera wa rena wa Polokwane o lemogile gore maAfrika ba ipsina kudu ge ba šomiša didiriswa tša bona ba sa dikoloti. Ba na le difounu, ba di rekela di-airtime, ba tseba gore di šomiša motlakase. Ba na le di-DSTV, ba tseba gore di šomiša motlakase. Eskom ke tlhatse ya gore ba patala motlakase. Ka moka ga rena maAfrika Borwa, a re se phaleng ke batho ba Polokwane, a re ba ekišeng re patele motlakase. Honorable members would have witnessed the announcement of the Integrated Resource Plan by the Minister of Mineral Resource and Energy last week. This is important to know because it means the RP is by no means the long-term solution to South Africa's energy crisis. As government puts it, it is a plan that directs the expansion of the electricity supply over the given period, and it augurs well with the just transition principle. Of significance about the IRP is that not only will it be in line with the commitments South Africa made at the climate change conference held in Paris in 2015 to reduce coal emissions, but it will also eliminate the element of risk when unwarranted issues surface at power stations. I am sure everybody will not want to experience load shedding anymore. I know that the prophets of doom are already shutting down this IRP, saying that it is not enough. But in my language, we say, "Jie palamorogo is better than nothing." We therefore, as the ANC, support this special appropriation bill.
Thank you, Honorable August.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, if Eskom was a private sector company, it would have long ceased to exist. But state-owned companies in a development state such as ours do not primarily exist to make a profit. They exist to provide a service while also contributing to the provision of jobs and the development of infrastructure. It's a delicate balance when such a company is mismanaged or plundered. Instead of contributing to its deployment, it drains the state of resources. In Eskom's case, it is driving South Africa to the brink of bankruptcy. Energy stability is undeniably important. It keeps the country, its economy, and its people going, and creates an environment conducive to investment. But government cannot simply default to bailouts. Money does not grow on trees. We don't have 59 billion lying around in a bottomless cash pit. On the contrary, money is desperately needed to custom poverty, narrow inequality, and create jobs. We should be very wary of using the National Revenue Fund to apply plasters to wounds requiring major surgery. Now more than ever, we need to stop talking about restructuring Eskom and actually do it. We will not do Eskom or South Africa any favors if we fail to deal decisively with the root causes of utilities' weaknesses. Good policy should be considered within Eskom's restructuring plans, which allow for cities to procure and generate their own power, which will create competition and that will lead to innovation and more job creation. These are the type of good and sustainable responses that South Africa needs to hear. Honourable Deputy Speaker, it will be insanity to use the 59 billion to paper over the cracks and allow Eskom to carry on as usual while mismanaging its way another bailout without conditions. Good therefore welcomes the strict reporting requirements attached to the bailout. This includes regular liquidity reports, monthly management reports, reports on action taken to recover electricity debt, reports on initiatives taken to reduce primary energy costs and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Besides anything else, Eskom won't be able to use this money to pay out hefty year-end bonuses to undeserving staff. South Africans will study these reports and hold government and Eskom to account. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Gallo.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. First and foremost, the African Independent Congress supports the special appropriation bill. We must all be worried. A number of our children at various schools were affected by load shedding on Wednesday during their computer application technology exam. Deputy Speaker, the special appropriation bill earmarks the provision of 26 billion and 33 billion for 2019-2020 and 2020-2021 financial years to Eskom under very stringent conditions. Part of the conditions require Eskom to use this money to settle debt and interest payments only. Another condition is for Eskom to outline a concrete plan of action to recover the money owed for electricity sales. Eskom has been thrown a spanner. It has to act decisively against the defaulting municipalities. We have also noted with grave concern the legal battle between Eskom and the National Energy Regulator, NERSA. This is unprecedented and unusual in the history of the utility company. Honorable members, while we support the division of Eskom into 3 compartments, we remain unhopeful about the future of the existing subsidiaries of Eskom, that is Rotec and Roshcon. Nothing has been said about them in the unbundling of Eskom debate. In closing, we call upon the President of the country, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, perhaps to consider the appointment of Bobby Goldsill as Eskom CEO. Mr. Goldsill is an established businessman, having worked for Eskom as its national non-executive director in 3 trying times. We must narrow our ideological differences to accommodate our converging
Honorable
interests.
Member, your time
Thank you
has
very
expired.
much.
Honorable Madisha. Dumela ntate.
Thank you very much. I agree with Wikipedia, which identifies 3 periods of energy crisis. And I here am referring to the financial years. The 2007-8, 2014-15, and 2019. We are indeed in an energy crisis. As an example, and there are many, of course, the area around Kriel in Mpumalanga is now the world's 2nd biggest sulfur dioxide emissions hotspots. People are dying with lung-related illnesses. Eskom has gone to court to recover 69 billion cash bailout it received, and to have the right to raise a further 40 billion rand by increasing electricity prices by 16% in order to solve its liquidity crunch over the next 3 years. And the people who are going to suffer are those poor people in our country. Eskom is in such a deep crisis that South Africa is starting, as Moody's put it, down a barrel of a downgrade. Acting CEO Jabu Mabuza does not know the electricity generation and distribution business. There is no end in sight to Eskom's financial, managerial, and generation of electricity crisis. In 2019, Eskom's power production dropped to 219 gigawatts. It cannot produce more. Eskom has admitted that more than a third of its infrastructure is broken. Eskom spent over 50 billion rand on diesel in 10 years. The utility has only 2,000 megawatts of spare capacity. Deputy President,
He's here.
Speaker.
Deputy President is here. You're right.
Eskom is in a deep crisis. Talented specialists who know the business very well must be placed in charge. Government must deal with the leadership issue at Eskom. Meanwhile, it must buy, I'm referring to government, all the electricity it can from the IPPs and allow municipalities to do the same. The people of our country are suffering, and unfortunately, Ndate President, liapalelwa mre.
Nakwe how if you deal in Dade Madisha. Honorable Hendrickson.
Deputy Speaker, I've just been informed that I'm a grandpa, 6 granddaughters, and now have another grandson. So I'm going to support this bill to keep the lights burning. The solution to the woes of Eskom has ably been offered by the leader of the 6th Parliament when he spoke about the Charter of Positive Values and his call for ethical leadership. The Deputy President has shown his support to strengthen the civil society mechanism supporting the Civil Society Manifesto. With regard to Eskom, there's a need for a model of engagement with the civil society mechanism which seems to elude us. If this was in place, we could have saved the country 59 billion rand. Existing oversight mechanisms like the Eskom board, the ministry, the cabinet is not enough. The country needs a civil society mechanism to have oversight over Eskom. There's a need for a model of engagement with civil society to assist the board, the ministry, and the cabinet so the people can govern. One of our respected ministers have alluded to the lack of ideological psych among honourable members of parliament to the values of the liberation movement. The exercise of this ideological psych would have prevented the problems at Eskom. It has not gone unnoticed that Eskom did the country proud by connecting many of the most indigent people in the country, but at a cost which has wiped out this remarkable achievement. Eskom can do the country proud to connect all South Africans from 80% to 95%. We wish the Minister of Public Enterprises the wisdom of Solomon to put Eskom on the right path, and he is well placed to do so. Al-Jamaa supports the Special Appropriation Bill called the Special Appropriation Act of 2019.
Honorable Joseph.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Let me acknowledge the work of National Treasury, Parliament Budget Office, Financial Fiscal Commission, all support staff, and all institutions who participated in the Special Appropriations Bill for Eskom. Eskom wat krag moet voorsien en as 'n winsgewende staat en die tyd moet funksioneer, het hulle mandaat en hulle visie in die staatskaping tydperk verloor. Die impak is negatief vir al op besighede, veiligheidsdienste, landboudienste, gesondheidsdienste en nou moet ook alle staatsdepartemente wat dienste verskaf aan gemeenskappe, hulle moet ook nou beurtkrag onkostes binne hulle begroting inwerk. Die regerende party, die ANC, moet volle verantwoordelikheid neem vir die swak ekonomiese groei, hoë werkloosheidssyfer en die onderverhaling van inkomste by SARS en munisipaliteite. A corrupt ANC has corrupted many state departments. Stop blaming apartheid for the mess of Eskom. Auditeursverslae bevestig dat Eskom se senior bestuur gedurende die staatskapingstydperk nie finansiële riglyne daarby en goeie bestuur gebly hou het nie en ook nie die tenderregulasies gevolg het nie. Van die groot insinkings was die afskaffing van die onderhoudsprogramme by die kragstasies en die vermindering van ingenieurs. Eskom se pogings om interne verantwoordelikheid te hou het nog niks resultate opgelewer nie. Die ANC-beheerde munisipaliteite, ANC-beheerde staatsdepartemente, as ook die nie betaalkultuur van die ANC in sekere gemeenskappe moet nou aangespreek word. Die DA sê almal moet dieselfde behandel word. Waarom moet wetsgehoorsame burgers wat ook betaal en swaar kry en krag koop, waarom moet hulle dit doen terwyl daar onwettige gebruik is van krag en die weiering om te betaal? That is baie belangrik, Speaker. The Appropriations Committee during its oversight visit to Eskom head office last week experienced load shedding and Eskom senior management could not explain. Some of the root causes are conflict of interest, no consequence management and no following of National Treasury regulations and the defects at the newly built plants. It is very important. We must not underestimate the experience of the unions. Contracten en tenders moet ondersoek word. Honorable Minister and Deputy Speaker, take responsibility on behalf of the ANC. Your party, take responsibility and allow Parliament, allow us to help and fix the mess in Eskom. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Matafa.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Deputy President, and honorable members. Honorable Surapen speaks of DA rejected inputs. These inputs were rejected because the DA wanted to expropriate the committee discussion without compensation, or at least give credit to the committee. The DA summarized the committee discussions and wanted to pass them as their own. In my submission, I will underscore some of these conditions as discussed and agreed to in the committee. My advice to Honorable Shibambo, in as far as his concerns in relation to stabilizing the coal cost in Eskom, he must please revisit the Eskom 9-point plan as presented to our committee, as well as the inputs made by Honorable Minister Godan during the budget vote debate on the 11th of July 2019. Please pay undivided attention to paragraph 32 under the operational performance section. A great injustice would occur if we approach this debate as if it's the first time we engage on this serious matter of saving Eskom, and by extension, saving the economy of this country. It is very difficult to respond to Honorable Wessels because his input is from a defeated position. Leaves to say, President Nelson Mandela warned us of such politicians in his last SONA debate of 1999, when, I quote, We should all be careful not to turn concern for difficulties into a death wish. For us not supporting this bill, Deputy Speaker, because of difficulties faced by Eskom, is tantamount to an economic death wish. Honorable Deputy Speaker, Eskom is too important to the socio-economic development of our country. The existence of a positive correlation between electricity availability and economic performance is well documented. The same can be said about a healthy Eskom and the country's economic performance. In fact, Eskom is the backbone of our economy. The committee agrees with the President's assertion in his SONA 2019 address that Eskom is too vital and it cannot be allowed to fail. Thus, we are in support of this 2019 Special Appropriations Bill. As the committee, we further recommend the good progress made by the Minister and the board as led by Mr. Mabuza in their efforts to stabilize Eskom. In fact, various external interested parties who made written and oral submissions during the public participation period echo the committee's sentiments. However, the committee and most external parties agree that there should be stringent conditions attached to this recapitalization package. Another area of overwhelming agreement is that the conditions must be accompanied by clear consequences should they be ignored. We also agree that some of the conditions will find themselves in the Appropriations Bill, others in regulations, and others as ministerial conditions. For the 26 billion rands to be appropriated in the current financial year, the minister must put strong ministerial conditions. And for the 33 billion rands for financial year 2020 and 2021, some conditions must find themselves in the Appropriations Bill, regulations, and ministerial conditions. This will send a strong message that Parliament and the people of South Africa are serious about demanding accountability and value for money. Honorable Deputy Speaker, Medupi and Kusile are critical for the country's energy security. However, the budget and time overruns in the bill program suggest high levels of internal control failures, negligence, and even corruption, especially corporate capture. By the end of the construction of this project, the budget would have been overshot by over 140 billion rands. As these budget overruns persist, the committee was further informed that one contractor has considered that it was overpaid by 4 billion rands. I repeat, 4 billion rands. This is no small change by any measure. In light of these alarming revelations, the following serious questions must be answered. Who was responsible for this payment? What was the role of the contractor in the said saga? How many other contractors have been overpaid? Does Eskom have adequate checks and balances in respect of its finances and governance? The red light suggests that a thorough forensic and on the whole bill project must be conducted as a matter of urgency. We therefore call upon the Minister of Finance to institute a forensic audit and report back to Parliament. The committee was shocked to discover that Eskom is not serious about its role in the transformation of our economy, especially through implementing the BBBEE policy. The significant reduction in BBBEE spend from 74% of target in financial year end March 2018 to a disheartening 54% against a self-imposed target of 85% for the financial year that ended in March 2019 is a bad reflection on Eskom's commitment to transforming the economy. The President, again, in the 2019 SONA, lists economic transformation and job creation as one of the 7 key priorities. The Minister of Finance argues in the National Treasury's economic transformation, inclusive growth, and competitiveness towards economic strategy for South African paper, that public procurement can be leveraged upon for the support and growth of SMMEs. One of the ruling party's manifesto commitments is based on the concentration and transformation of the economy and opening it up to participation by small, medium enterprises, emerging cooperatives. These are 4 good reasons for Eskom to pull up their socks in this area of BBBEE. As the ANC, we support the bill. Thank you very much.
Honorable the Minister of Finance.
Deputy Speaker. Okay. All right. Deputy Speaker, thank you very much for this opportunity to briefly respond to the debate. First, I must start by saying I would like to thank all the members who participated in the debate for their very, very invaluable comments. We'll try and take each comment seriously as we plot the way forward. I joined this house in October last year, so maybe you should have said happy anniversary to me. It was in October last year. Now, one of the things which I've learned since assuming office is that the Minister of Finance is burdened with having to find resources for Eskom, for South African Airways, South African Express, Dinel, Alexco, and then a huge bill for the compensation of employees, many programs that must be funded amidst an aging and overburdened infrastructure. Within the context of declining tax revenues due to low economic growth. So when I hear members say, Eskom must be funded, Eskom must be funded, I say, okay, I agree, but tell me where I should take the money from. But there has to be a give and take. You can't have everything at the same time. So some members have stood here and said, Eskom this, Eskom that. And they spoke about Eskom as if it's some imaginary human being somewhere. But it's not. Eskom is a business. It's run by people. So one of the key issues that we need to solve is by appointing the correct people to run Eskom. That's what we need to do. We must appoint the correct board of directors. We must appoint a competent management team. And we must then be in a position to hold the board of directors and the management team accountable for the operations of Eskom. The problem at Eskom, Deputy Speaker, it's not just financial. The problem at Eskom is not just financial. And if we're going to reduce a complex problem to the lowest common multiplier, being the financial problem, we're not solving the problem. We need to approach solutions to Eskom via complex theory, understand the complexity of the institution we're dealing with in order to come out with complex solutions. Having said that, and as I take my seat, I've stood on this podium and asked members of the political parties in this house to go out to the communities and their members to mobilize them to pay for services rendered. I repeat that message, Honorable Shivambu. I repeat that message. Go mobilize your people to render unto Eskom what belongs to Eskom as a law-abiding citizen of the country. Deputy Speaker, Deputy President, I thank all members for their contributions, and I wish you well as you pay your bills.
Point
Thank
of
you,
order.
Honourable Minister. Yes, Honourable Member, why
Let
you
us
rising?
pass a special division of revenue bill to fund us to go to the people and
No,
tell
Honourable
them.
Member, the debate has been concluded. Honourable Members, are there any objections to the special appropriation bill being read the first time? I now put the question. Those in favour will say aye. Those against will say no. I think the ayes have it.
Chairperson, the EFF calls for a division.
A division having been called,
Yes.
the bells will be rung for 5 minutes. Thank you. I got it. Honourable members, I would like to remind you that you may only vote from your allocated seat, and when requested to do so, you must simply indicate your vote by pressing the appropriate button below the yes, no, or abstain signs. If a member inadvertently presses the wrong button, the member may thereafter press the correct button. The last button pressed will be recorded as the member's vote. The question before the House is that the special appropriation bill be read a first time. Are all members now in their allocated seats? Voting will now commence. Those in favor of the bill being read a first time should press the yes button. And those against should press the no button. Those wishing to abstain should press the abstain button. Have all members voted? Deputy Chief Whip, there are a few members indicating. Thank you, honourable members. The voting session is now closed. We've recorded your names, honourable members. Your names have been recorded, honourable members. Thank you. Honourable members, the outcome of the division is as follows. There's no abstentions, 105 voted against the question, and 200 voted in favour. The question is accordingly agreed to, and the Secretary will read the bill a first time.
Special Appropriation Bill.
The Secretary will read the last order of the day.
Second reading, Special Appropriation Bill.
Are there any objections to the Special Appropriation Bill being read a second time? I put the question. Those in favour will say aye. Those against will say no. I think the ayes have it.
Chairperson, division.
No.
We're calling for a division.
We've just had a division, honourable member.
Okay, please record the objection of the EFF.
The objection
Economic
is recorded.
Freedom Fighters. Until the taxi driver goes,
Thank
no
you,
money.
honourable member. Honourable Steenhuisen.
House Chairperson, will you note the objection of the Democratic Alliance?
Objection will be noted.
ACDP as well.
As well as the ACDP.
FF Plus, thank you.
Freedom Front Plus.
UDM, Chair.
UDM. Anyone else? The Secretary, order. With those objections, the question is agreed to and the Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Special Appropriation Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. That concludes the business for the day and the House is adjourned.